He left me everything, except the truth. When I opened his letter, my father's empire and my identity collapsed in one sentence. I walked into the courtroom, pretending my hands weren't shaking. The air was heavier than it should have been, sharp with the scent of polished oak, cold marble, and old tension. Every click of my heels echoed like a countdown. The walls looked the same as they had the day my father was sentenced, though this time, no one was on trial for a crime. This was supposed to be about his will, about legacy and love and fairness. But we all knew better. This was about power and the family he'd left fractured beyond repair. I could feel their eyes before I saw them. Sitting on the left side of the courtroom, my mother, elegant even in grief, pretended to look at the ceiling, her face unreadable behind a black veil. On the right sat my half-brother, Dylan, the man who hadn't spoken to me since the funeral. His expression was calm, too calm, like someone who already knew how this would end. I tightened my grip on the worn leather folder in my hands. Inside were copies of letters, old, yellowed, and full of the kind of words that could burn down everything my father had built. "Miss Hale," the bailiff's voice called. I blinked, realizing Judge Whitmore had already entered. I rose, my voice barely steady. "Yes, Your Honor." He nodded for us to be seated. "We're here regarding the estate of the late Charles Hale. Both parties claim rightful inheritance to the Hale Trust, valued at $72 million. His words sliced through the silence. 72 million. A number that had been repeated in whispers, in law offices, and in tabloids. But it wasn't the money that haunted me. It was the question of why my father had changed his will 2 weeks before he died. Dylan's attorney, a sleek man in a navy suit, rose first. "Your Honor, my client contends that the decedent's final testament was altered under duress." I bit back a laugh, quiet but bitter. Duress. As if I had forced my father to give me what he believed was mine. When it was my turn, my lawyer, Angela Monroe, stood. Calm. Steady. "Your Honor, we have clear evidence that the will reflects Mr. Hale's true intentions. Additionally, we will present correspondence proving that Mr. Dylan Hale knowingly concealed assets during probate." The courtroom hummed. Dylan's jaw twitched. My pulse quickened. The judge looked over his glasses at me. "Ms. Hale, you understand the gravity of these claims?" "Yes, Your Honor," I said. "I do." What I didn't say was that I also understood the cost. Every time I spoke, I could feel my father's ghost in the room. The man who'd raised me to believe that truth was a weapon, sharp, but only worth using if you could bear the wounds it left. That night, after court adjourned, I drove to my father's old house, the mansion on Laurel Ridge. The gates still creaked open at my approach, like they remembered me even when no one else did. Inside, the place smelled faintly of his cologne, sandalwood and something deeper, like cedar smoke. I walked past the grand piano, untouched since he died, and stopped at the portrait above the fireplace. Him, younger, smiling in that rare way he only did when no one was watching. I whispered, "Why did you change the will, Dad?" There was no answer, of course. Just the echo of my own voice, the sound of the fire cracking beneath layers of ash. My phone buzzed. A text from Dylan. "Meet me tomorrow. Alone. There's something you should see." For a long moment, I stared at the message. The last time he'd asked me to meet alone, it had been at the funeral. That conversation had ended with him throwing his drink at the wall and calling me a liar. But something about the phrasing, "something you should see," pulled at me. I didn't reply, but I didn't delete it either. The next morning, the courtroom was colder. Maybe it was me. The nerves, the memories, the fatigue. When the judge entered, everyone rose. I caught a glimpse of Dylan, looking far too calm again, but this time there was something else in his eyes, something that looked like pity. Our lawyers began the usual back and forth until Angela presented the letters. "These," she said, holding them up, "are written in the decedent's own hand. They confirm that Mr. Hale discovered fraudulent activity within Hale Industries, specifically by his son, Dylan Hale." Gasps. Even the judge looked startled. Angela continued, "The letters also indicate his decision to revise his will, leaving the majority of his estate to his daughter, Ms. Mackenzie Hale. The defense objected, but the judge overruled. As the clerk read excerpts aloud, my throat tightened. Hearing my father's words again after all these years was like reopening a wound that had never really healed. If you're reading this, it means I've made the choice I should have made long ago. Dylan has become a man I no longer recognize. Mackenzie, though stubborn, remains the one I trust most with what I've built. She has what I never did, heart.
My eyes stung.
Dylan's face turned pale. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. I needed him to hear it. I needed him to feel even a fraction of what he'd done to me. To us. Then suddenly Dylan stood. Those letters are forgeries. The courtroom erupted. The judge's gavel slammed. Order.
Dylan pointed directly at me.
She wrote them. She forged our father's handwriting. She was always obsessed with being his favorite. My stomach dropped. For a second, it felt like all the air had left the room. Angela rose, calm as ever. Your Honor, we anticipated such an accusation. A forensic analysis confirms the handwriting authenticity, verified by 2 independent experts. The judge leaned back, considering. Dylan sat down, jaw tight, eyes like dark glass. And for the first time since the trial began, I saw something flicker behind his controlled mask, fear. That night, I met him anyway. At the old boathouse by the lake, the place where we'd grown up playing as kids before everything had gone to hell. He was already there when I arrived, hands in his pockets, hair disheveled like he hadn't slept. You shouldn't have done this, he said quietly. Done what? Dragged Dad's name through the mud. You think this makes you righteous? I crossed my arms. I think it makes me honest. He laughed bitterly. You really think he loved you more, don't you? I don't know what he loved, I said. But I know he trusted me to do what was right. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The wind off the lake rustled the trees, carrying the smell of rain. Then Dylan stepped closer. His voice softened. There's more you don't know, Mackenzie. Something you should have heard from him, but he never told you. My pulse quickened. What are you talking about? He looked at me like he was trying to decide whether I could handle the truth. Then he pulled something from his coat pocket, a sealed envelope, yellowed with age. My father's handwriting on the front. For you, he said. But once you read it, you'll wish you hadn't. I hesitated, staring at the familiar slant of the ink. My father's voice, trapped on paper. When I looked up again, Dylan was gone. Just the echo of his words remained. You'll wish you hadn't. I held the envelope all night. The rain hammered against the glass of my apartment window, each drop sounding like a warning. The paper felt fragile between my fingers, soft at the edges from years of keeping secrets. My father's handwriting, strong, slanted, deliberate, stared back at me. I'd seen that handwriting on birthday cards, on business contracts, on the notes he'd leave on the refrigerator when he worked late. But this letter, this was different. The date at the top was the same week he'd rewritten his will. I could have torn it open right then, but fear is strange. It convinces you that knowledge itself can hurt. By dawn, I was still awake. The city outside looked washed clean, but I felt dirtier than ever. Finally, I broke the seal. The first line stopped me cold. Mackenzie, if you're reading this, then the truth I ran from has found you. My breath caught. You are not who you think you are. The legacy I built was never meant to belong to you. Or Dylan. It belongs to someone else entirely. But to protect you, I signed papers that made you my heir. The blood that runs in your veins, it's not mine. I dropped the letter. Not his. For a moment, the room tilted, the world around me folding into something unrecognizable. My heartbeat sounded too loud. I read again, slower this time, as if clarity might make it less painful. Your mother and I made mistakes that neither of us could fix. You were born of another man, a choice she hid and I forgave, but I loved you as if you were my own. When I discovered Dylan's deceit in the company, I rewrote my will not because of blood, but because of truth. You are the only one who never lied to me. Tears blurred the ink. He wasn't my biological father. Everything I'd fought for, the estate, the trial, the name Hale, suddenly felt like borrowed light, something shining on me only by accident. I folded the letter, hands trembling. I should have felt grateful that he still chose me, but all I felt was lost. When I arrived at court later that morning, Angela noticed the change immediately.
You didn't sleep.
I found something, I said quietly. She looked at the envelope sticking from my bag. Is it bad? It's everything. Inside the courtroom, Dylan was already seated, his expression unreadable again. For once, I didn't look away. He must have seen something in my eyes, because his smirk faltered. The proceedings resumed, the attorneys trading motions and objections like trained fencers. I barely heard them. The letter's words echoed in my head, each one rewriting my sense of self. When Judge Whitmore finally called a recess, Dylan approached me in the corridor. So, you opened it? Yes. Now you understand why I wanted you to stop. I stared at him. You knew. He nodded. Dad told me before he died. Said it wasn't fair to you, but he couldn't face you with it. And you let me fight for a name that isn't even mine? His voice was quiet. You always wanted truth. Now you have it. Something inside me cracked. You think that's mercy? It's reality, Mackenzie. And soon the court will know it too. He walked away before I could answer. During the afternoon session, the defense made their move. Dylan's lawyer stood with a confidence that chilled me. Your Honor, new evidence has surfaced. Documents proving that Ms. Hale was not the biological daughter of Charles Hale, and therefore not a legal heir under the estate's bloodline clause. The room gasped. Angela shot to her feet. Objection. This evidence was not previously disclosed. Overruled, the judge said, frowning. But I'll allow time to review. He looked at me then, softer than before. Ms. Hale, is there any truth to this claim? I stood slowly, every eye on me. I thought of the letter of my father's final confession. I could deny it, delay it, but the same man who taught me truth as a weapon wouldn't want me to use lies now. Yes, Your Honor, I whispered. It's true. The gallery erupted again. Reporters, family friends, whispers like static. I met Dylan's gaze across the aisle. For the first time, he looked uncertain, even ashamed. Maybe he hadn't expected me to admit it. Maybe he still didn't understand what that admission meant. Because at that moment, something strange happened. The shame I'd felt dissolved. The truth didn't break me. It freed me. I turned to the judge. But my father's will wasn't written for blood. It was written for integrity. And that's what I'll defend. Angela's eyes glistened. The judge nodded slowly. Very well. We'll continue. That night, I visited Laurel Ridge again. The mansion was colder, emptier. I carried the letter to the fireplace and sat before it. The flames cast long shadows across the floor. Dad, I whispered. You should have told me. I would have still loved you. Behind me, a soft knock echoed through the hall. I turned. It was Liam, the company's legal advisor and the one person who'd stood by me quietly through the storm. He stepped inside, his presence steady, grounding. You shouldn't be here alone, he said. I'm fine. No, you're not. He came closer, crouched near the hearth. I knew about the adoption. He made me promise not to tell until he passed. He wanted to protect you. My heart ached. From what? From the people who'd see your worth as less because of bloodlines. From Dylan's hunger. From the press. I looked up at him. You kept his secret too. I kept his love intact, he said quietly. Because he never once doubted that you were his daughter. Something in his voice broke through the weight inside me. I hadn't realized until that moment how badly I needed someone to remind me that love wasn't measured by DNA. He reached for my hand. You have a choice now. You can fight for the inheritance, or you can walk away and start fresh with your name, your truth. I thought about it for a long moment, the crackle of the fire the only sound between us. Finally, I said, I'll fight, but not for the money, for the truth in his name, and for the legacy he believed in. Liam nodded. Then I'll stand with you. The next day was judgment. Judge Whitmore's gavel struck once, echoing through the courtroom like a heartbeat. The The court finds that while Ms. Mackenzie Hale is not a biological heir, the decedent's final will demonstrates clear intent to name her as successor. Therefore, the will stands. The estate is awarded to Ms. Hale. For a moment, no one moved. Then Angela touched my shoulder, whispering, "You did it." But it didn't feel like victory. It felt like release. Across the room, Dylan stared at me, eyes hollow. As the crowd dispersed, he approached one last time. "I didn't want it to end like this," he said. "It didn't have to," I replied. "You chose to fight ghosts instead of truth." He gave a bitter smile. "Maybe. But one day, you'll read more than that letter. You'll find out what he never wrote." Before I could ask, he turned and walked away, leaving those words hanging in the air like unfinished music. That night, I returned to the mansion once more. Liam was waiting by the door, holding a file. "What's that?" I asked. "Something your father left in the company archives. It's sealed with your name." I opened it slowly. Inside was another letter, short, almost rushed. "If you've come this far, it means the truth hasn't scared you away. There's one more secret buried beneath the foundation of Hale Industries. Find the blueprints in my study. They'll show you what I couldn't say." My breath caught. "What does that mean?" Liam frowned. "I don't know. But if he left a secret inside the company, it could change everything." I looked at the firelight reflecting off the letter's edges. Maybe the trial was over, but the real mystery was just beginning. Outside, thunder rolled again, distant but growing closer. I whispered, "All right, Dad. Let's see what you were really hiding." And as the storm gathered over Laurel Ridge, I felt it, the return of that old familiar chill. The suspense wasn't over. It had only just begun.